Welcome to Project Foodie. My name is Daniel Holzman. I'm the chef and owner of the Meatball Shop restaurant in New York City.
I take after my grandmother. My grandmother was a huge fan of tiny balls.
I didn't say it! This cook-along system is based on the way that I train cooks in my restaurants. We cook everything together. So I'm gonna be here with you for every second of the process until your meal hits the plate. Feel free to hit pause, rewind, or slow it down whenever you need to. You've just selected Thai-style steak salad. This recipe has 3 really simple steps and should take about 30 minutes. We are here to make a very, very, very delicious steak salad, Thai-style steak salad. This is a super simple recipe, an absolutely delicious lunch salad, or if you're in the mood for a lighter dinner, a great dinner salad. This is the type of thing I love to eat on a hot day because it's crunchy and refreshing and a little bit spicy, and it fills me up without slowing me down. You know what I'm saying? You ready to get started? First and foremost, I want to gather all of our ingredients and have everything sensibly laid out. In a restaurant, we call this mise en place. It means having everything ready at a hand's reach for when you need it. So for step 1, we're going to go ahead and make our salad dressing. We're going to season our steak and we're going to get the steak marinating. So I'm just going to first and foremost sprinkle our steak. I have a skirt steak here. A skirt steak is one of my favorite cuts. It's a little less expensive and it's a little less known. It's actually the diaphragm muscle that holds the stomach in place and helps the cow to breathe. And so you can see it's kind of thin and it's really long. It's almost this long, but this is just a section of it. And it's got these striated muscles, these striations. So the muscle runs in this direction. It's got a really amazing flavor, and it's also got a really great kind of like toothsome texture and quality without being overly chewy. So I love it, and we're just gonna lightly sprinkle. This is a really thin steak, so we want a light sprinkling of salt. Also, the dressing that we're gonna marinate it in has quite a bit of salt as well. So just a light sprinkling of salt to make sure that we've seasoned the meat before we go ahead and start making our dressing. For this dressing, what I'm going to start with is a clove of garlic, and I want to peel it. And the way I go about peeling garlic, which for me is the easiest method, is I just kind of place it on the cutting board, and with the flat part of my knife, I give it a little press with my palm, being careful not to cut myself. And what'll happen is you'll see that it kind of crushes it, but also loosens the skin, and the skin just pops right off. So it's really easy. And then there's a little bolster end here, which you can just kind of cut out with your knife and remove. And then we're actually going to make this dressing, and I'm going to use this raw garlic. And whenever I serve raw garlic, I really like to make sure that I chop it up into really fine pieces so that I don't get any big chunks of raw garlic in my salad, which can kind of ruin the experience. I want the garlic flavor to flavor the dressing, but I don't want it to like overpower it with any chunks that I chew into. And so a really great technique that I love to use is I just take we take our garlic and we kind of chop it into some small pieces, and then take some salt and we sprinkle it on top, and the salt acts almost like sandpaper, and you use the side of your knife and you can just kind of drag it in to the garlic like this, and it will actually smash the garlic. I think they sell little tiny kind of garlic presses. Those things work really well. I don't happen to have one, but those things work. Basically do the exact same thing as this, but in the absence of a garlic press, this is kind of the way I mash up the garlic to make sure that I'm really getting the garlic smashed into really fine paste so that I'm not going to get any big chunks. And then we can just scrape this up and drop this right into our bowl where we're going to mix our vinaigrette. Whenever I work with raw garlic, I want to just rinse my knife, and I'm just going to wash my cutting board because that flavor soaks into the wood, and then everything I cut from then on is going to have that raw garlic flavor. So, little rinse. And we can just kind of wipe that raw garlic flavor off of our board and continue with our dressing. So the second thing I've got going on is I've got these Thai bird chilies, and depending upon how spicy you like your dressing, these chilies can be quite spicy. But it's actually the seeds of the chili that have the spice in them. So I prefer it to have a good amount of spice, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna slice the whole thing, including the seeds. But just so you see kind of how one would do it, what I would do if I didn't want those seeds in there is I would cut our chili right in half, and you can see that it opens it up, and you can just kind of scrape the seeds right out and just discard those, and that's going to be most of the heat. So then you're going to have a much more mild dressing, and we can just slice this into some thin rounds, just kind of slowly, carefully slicing them into these thin rounds that are going to really flavor that dressing and be one of the key components. So that can go right into our bowl. And I'm careful with a Thai bird chili or any really spicy chili. Again, I'm putting these seeds in there because I like it a little bit spicy. With one of these chilies, I'm going to go ahead and just rinse my hand off and make sure that I don't like touch my hand to my eye, because you can burn yourself. It's really got a lot of spice to it. All right. Like if you need to excuse yourself to the restroom, this would be a great time to wash your hands with soap and water before you do any intimate contact, because very spicy indeed. That's a mistake you only make one time. So we've got our garlic and we've got our chilies in here, and then I'm just going to add the rest of our ingredients for our dressing. So we've got a couple of limes, and great trick when I want to juice a lime by hand is I kind of grab two hands on top and I give it a little push and I roll it, and by rolling it, it's smashing the inside of the fruit. You can kind of slice it in half, and you can see that it's already starting to juice really easily because I smashed it. But in this case, I've got this kind of Mexican lime squeezer, and I just place the lime face down so that when I smash it, it actually turns it inside out. And that's going to do two things. One, it's going to get all of that juice out of there, and two, it's actually going to crush the peel, where there are a ton of really delicious, flavorful oils that actually are going to add a lot of nuance to that dressing. So our lime is getting squeezed right in here for our dressing. It's amazing how much juice is in these bad boys. It's really incredible. So that goes in. And then we have some sesame oil, and this is really important. This is a raw sesame oil. This is not a toasted sesame oil. When you think about Japanese food, it's got that really strong toasted sesame oil flavor. This is not what we're using here. This one is neutral. It almost tastes like a vegetable oil. You would substitute a vegetable oil or a canola oil for this. I would not substitute a toasted sesame oil, so be really careful because that's a big distinction. We can give that a little whisk together. Fish sauce is a really amazing ingredient. It's got a ton of flavor, and it's really kind of stinky. They actually make it with fermented fish. I visited an island in southern Vietnam on the Cambodian border, a little island called Phu Quoc Island, where they make all the fish sauce, and the whole island smells like this really pungent fermenting fish. It's really strong and it's really salty, but it's got a really distinct, unmistakable flavor that is one of the kind of like quintessential flavors of Southeast Asia, and you can't substitute anything for it. It's so delicious. So that's going to go right in there. And then also some brown sugar for sweetness. And it's going to be that really sour lime juice, the salty fish sauce, and the brown sugar for sweetness that really help to balance the spiciness of the chilies and make it so that, you know, even though it's really spicy and intensely flavored, it washes away immediately. Like you taste it on your tongue, and then it's really, really bright, and then it's gone. So give that a little taste, and it's already like it's like begging me to just continue eating, because it's like a little too spicy, a little too salty, a little too sweet, and a little too sour. It's so great, the balance. And then finally, what I like to add are the cilantro stems. So we're going to put a bunch of cilantro into the salad itself, and the leaves are going to use for that, but the cilantro stems have a ton of flavor. So we can just take the cilantro that I'm going to pick later for our salad, and we can just, starting at the kind of stem end, trim off the very kind of end pieces, and then just thinly slice the stems into some small rounds. And these are going to be a big part of the flavor of the dressing. So the cilantro stems are going to float around in there, and they're going to infuse that dressing with that really fresh flavor of cilantro. So those can go right into our dressing as well. And then what we want to do is just take our dressing that we've just made, and we're going to marinate the steak. And that's just going to start to infuse the flavor, and then also the sugar from the dressing when we actually cook the steak in the frying pan is going to caramelize on to the steak, and it's going to give it a really lovely kind of like grilled flavor that I think of as kind of like ubiquitous with the wood-fired or charcoal grills that you see in Thailand. This is like a roadside salad made in our kitchen apparently. All right, so I've got our steaks marinating, our dressing is finished, and that is the end of step 1. Step 2, we're going to cook our steak, and we're going to cut up some veggies for our salad. Take a minute to clean and organize and kind of get rid of anything we don't need anymore. You can put our salad dressing fixings away, and we can move into cooking our steak. So I've got this really heavy bottomed cast iron pan, which is great for cooking a steak. You can also use any heavy bottomed pan. It's important to have a heavy bottom because it's going to allow it to get really nice and hot, and because it's got a thick bottom, it's going to retain a lot of heat, and it's going to cook the steak without cooling itself down. So it's going to get that really nice caramelized flavor. It's going to darken the steak. For a thin steak like this, if our pan is too thin, the bottom of the pan is too thin, the steak hits it, it sucks the heat out of the pan, and then the steak won't have a chance to get caramelized before it cooks through. I want the steak to be medium rare, but I also want it to have a nice crust. So I'm going to get that pan smoking hot dry, and then I'm going to put our steak in with nothing but the marinade, press it down, and just let it really like sizzle and griddle. It's going to be amazing. So while that's heating up, we can start to pick our herbs. We've got some cilantro, and we took the stems off already, but we can just kind of pick the leaves. And when I try and cook, a dish from a country, I try and kind of mimic the style of cooking that you might find in the country. And the cuisine of Thailand isn't overly refined. People aren't taking time to, obviously there are amazing fancy restaurants and in the cities and international cities with cuisines from all over the world, but like for the most part I don't associate Thai food with being overly OCD about the way that they cut and chop things. So I'm therefore not going to be like overly careful. I'm just kind of pulling the leaves off. They're going to be really beautiful and fresh, but I'm not gonna kill myself picking every single leaf off here. We already added the stem and really discussed how delicious the stem is, so a little bit of stem isn't going to kill us, and it's actually going to add flavor and crunch and texture and variety to the salad. So we have some cilantro that's kind of picked off the stem for the most part, and then we have some mint leaves. Mint and cilantro is a really traditional combination that you find in a lot of Southeast Asian salads in Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia. You'll just take the kind of like mint leaves, and maybe the big leaves we can tear in half because they're a little bit big, and the smaller leaves we can leave whole. But that combination of mint and cilantro, so delicious, and it's really kind of like screams Southeast Asian salad. A lot of people sometimes you'll find basil in here as well, but for this particular salad I think it's delicious on its own with just the mint and the cilantro. So we can put it over to the side. We have a head of romaine, and this is the romaine heart, so it's actually already pretty tender. There aren't any of the tough outer green leaves. If there were, we could just kind of trim those off. In this case, maybe just the very tops are a little bit bitter. You can see they're a little thick and a little dark, so just maybe trim the very top off, and then we can go ahead and just cut this into 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch strips all the way down. So just kind of very simply straight down the center. And I can look at the very bottom for the bolster, which I don't want to end up in someone's salad, so I'll pull that out. And I can go right in our salad bowl along with our mint and cilantro right in there. And if I take a look at this pan, our pan is like screaming hot right now. So what we can do is grab our steak, and you can see that the lime juice has actually started to cook the steak. It's starting to turn a really pale white color, which is really beautiful. We're going to lay the steak in super carefully, making sure that we start close to ourselves and then lay it down away from ourselves. So in the off chance that it sputters and it slips off the fork and we drop it, it splatters anything hot away from ourselves and not towards ourselves. So we're just going to kind of carefully lay it down in our screaming hot pan. And you can see the smoke coming off of this thing because it was screaming hot. And that is going to give that flavor that we're looking for. T-minus like 20 seconds till my smoke detector starts going off, but worth it 100%. And I can smell, actually burning a tiny bit in my eyes, the hot chilies immediately. So I can just leave that on a high flame. We're going to cook that for 2 minutes on one side and then flip it for 2 minutes on the other. And while that's going, our cucumber. I think we've got a little bit more cucumber than one salad needs, so just grab a piece. What I like to do with a cucumber like this is I like to peel it, but not completely. So what I'll do is we'll take a strip of peel and then leave a strip of green, and then a strip of peel and leave a strip of green, strip of peel, strip of green. And what that'll do is it'll make a really beautiful pattern. When we finally cut this into rings, it's going to look really gorgeous in our salad and give us a depth of color. We can give it a little slice in half, and then on a bias we're going to just kind of make some thin slices of cucumber that are going to add a lot of crunch and flavor to our salad. So we're slicing our cucumber, and then we can go ahead and, using our fork, really carefully flip our steak, and we can see that it's exactly like we had wanted, gotten that beautiful crispy dark color where it's kind of grilled itself and the sugars have caramelized. We can cut our other cucumber half here to some long thin bias pieces. Just carefully not to cut ourselves. And those, I'm just going to kind of rubbing my hands together to separate them. We can drop right into our salad so that they all separate out and don't stick together. And then I've got this beautiful red onion, and we can just cut, maybe take a piece of this red onion like this. I just take it and slice a nice section off of it. You can see that. And then using my fingers, just peel the outer leaf out so we get this kind of nice section of red onion on the inside, which we can as well just slice, just like our cucumber, into some thin, round slices of raw, sweet red onion. And I love the flavor of raw red onion in my salad. If, you know, it's like so many people, you prefer it to be a little more subtle, you can soak it in cold water for about 5 minutes, and that'll take away a lot of the sharp flavor. So that's definitely something that I do, especially if I'm serving this in my restaurant. I don't prefer to have that raw onion flavor for all my guests, so I soak it in water and it takes the sharpness out of it. But in this case, I think it's going to be great with this salad. So our steak has been cooking. I'm just going to pull it out of the pan now and let it rest. Really important piece of the puzzle is letting the steak rest. We don't want to cut it right away because it's going to be really kind of have that bullseye raw in the middle, cooked on the outside, and it's also going to bleed all over the place as the liquid is, you know, it's really agitated. Letting it rest is going to allow the juices to find their way to the outside. It'll cook really evenly, and it'll be really perfectly evenly cooked. Generally speaking, the longer, the thicker a piece of meat is, the bigger a piece of meat is, the longer it has to rest for. So like, you know, a pork chop or a steak, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. A whole chicken, maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Something like this, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and it should be fine. Some of these cherry tomatoes, which are amazing right now. It's like the beginning of cherry tomato season. we can just cut them, maybe the little ones, right in half. Maybe some of these big ones we can cut into 3 pieces. Just to make sure that, we don't have any giant pieces of tomato that are too big for people to manage. So little guys, just slice them right in half. Bigger guys into those 3 pieces. Those can go right inside here. And then finally, I've got these peanuts, and these peanuts are going to make the garnish for our salad. So we're going to just take some peanuts, and these are roasted and salted. We're just going to give them a little chop, and just going through and chopping them carefully and slowly so that I don't shoot them all over the place. This is something you could also do in a mortar and pestle really well, but in this case, I think chopping the peanuts isn't going to kill me. You could use a RoboCoupe or a Cuisinart, a little kitchen electric chopper works really well, but there are certain times where doing it by hand is faster than using a machine and then having to clean the machine. So, we've got some chopped peanuts for our garnish ready to go. We have our steak that's been nicely rested, and that is the end of step 2. Step 3, we're literally just gonna mix everything together, cut up our steak, and serve it. So before we get started with step 3, I'm just gonna clean up our area, put everything away, because this is basically all done. The last thing I want to do is just slice our steak, dress our salad. So I always, when I'm dressing a salad, want to wait until the last possible minute so it stays nice and crispy. We don't want it to like wilt the greens, which will happen with the acid from the salad. So kind of get all this stuff out of our way, put our stuff back in our fridge or wherever we're going with it. In this case, I'm just like sticking it off to the side, so I'm going to be cleaning up after. And this is a great time to take a minute and actually, the steak, if you're going to be serving it just lukewarm, you can leave it for overnight and serve it the next day. Just bring it back up to room temperature, or put it in the pan for a minute. You can serve it cold from the fridge. It's very delicious. So this is the type of thing that you can make a couple of days in advance, and have your salad all ready and dress it as you need to as you go along. All right, so our steak is rested. We're nice and clean and ready to go. We've got this salad that's super beautiful and ready to just toss and serve. So we can dress our salad with this vinaigrette. Being careful not to overdress it because it's really, really kind of sharp. It's got a lot of flavor. Oh, you know what? I'm missing something in this salad. I'm missing a key ingredient. I cannot believe I almost made our salad without watercress, which is one of my favorite greens. So I'm just going to chop. Thank you for reminding me. I've got a bunch of watercress, so I'm literally just going to chop it into 3 pieces. The stems on this stuff are moist and crunchy and delicious. So I don't have to do anything. I love watercress because you get 100% yield. Everything you buy, it's really inexpensive, and everything you buy gets used. So here's our salad that's all dressed, and I can give this a little. Wow. There's almost nothing better than the spiciness, barely sweet, and then there's really sharp from the onions, and then the moistness from the tomatoes and the crunch, and the cilantro and the mint are really fresh. This is a perfect thing that you want to eat on a summer day. And for this steak, I'm actually just going to dice it up. So we can take the steak off of our plate where it's been resting, and what we can do is just slice it. You can see that it's just perfectly medium rare there, and we can just cut it into small strips about 3/4 of an inch wide. Then I'm going to rotate it this way. We can cut it into small 3/4 inch dice, which is going to make really beautiful bite-sized pieces. I don't like to mess around with having to like cut my salad with a knife, you know what I'm saying? So, put some salad down on our plate. Right here. Gorgeous. Make sure we get tons of the tomatoes and the onions and everything that's fallen to the bottom of our bowl. The cucumbers and the cilantro. And then we've got our steak, which can go right over the top, marinated with the fish sauce and the sugar and the sesame oil and the lime juice. And then over the top of that we have our garnish, which is our freshly chopped peanuts. And that, ladies and gentlemen, after I wash my hands, is like one of my all-time favorite lunches, which is a Thai-style steak salad. You're going to be so excited to dig your teeth into this thing. I cannot wait to see your look on your face. Be sure to like and subscribe, check us on Instagram, and download the Project Foodie app on the iOS App Store. I hope you've enjoyed this Project Foodie cook-along, and I hope you'll join us for more. For our Thai-style steak salad, you're going to need the following ingredients. We have skirt steak, fish sauce, untoasted sesame oil, romaine hearts, dark brown sugar, garlic, kosher salt, fresh red chili pepper, limes, salt roasted peanuts, cherry tomatoes, cilantro, mint leaves, small red onion, watercress, English cucumber. For our Thai-style steak salad, you're going to need the following tools. A peeler, measuring spoons and measuring cups, a lime squeezer or reamer, mixing bowls, a cast iron pan or any pan with a heavy bottom for cooking the steak, a metal tong or meat fork for turning our steak, a whisk, and a knife and cutting board.